They got ice cream in that section. All right, here's my joke. I got a buddy of mine.
Yeah.
And he works with salmon. He takes photographs of salmon.
Okay.
And he photographs them wearing clothes.
A live salmon?
Yeah. He calls it shooting fish in apparel.
Oh, we get a lot of shots. Everybody come to the net. We just have to get more and more pucks to the net.
Pucks on net.
Pucks on net.
Putting pucks on net. We used to talk about in Vancouver getting pucks on net.
What were you saying about putting pucks on net?
Continue to put pucks on net.
Pucks on net!
Put pucks on net and get lucky sometime.
Pucks on net and driving and making a hard night on it.
Live on tape from Geeta's apartment. Her palatial estate on the 23rd floor. This is Pucks on Net, a Vancouver hockey podcast that doesn't talk about fantasy or fancy stats. We tell good jokes, though, and that's what we got lined up all day, all evening. I just got a text from Dave.
Oh?
Won't be on the podcast.
No.
He's got a busy life in Ottawa.
Dave's not a thing anymore.
Dave's a thing. He's going to hear this. He's going to feel really bad.
Sorry. I forget.
He's going to become one of those people, though, that you hear about but you never see. It'll be like Maris on Frasier.
He'll appear on Twitter in flip-floppy arguments. Haven't decided what take he's going to...
And people will get to the point where they will be like...
Thank God it's Twitter and you can take all the takes.
People start wondering, though, is Dave a real person or is it like a alter ego of Ryan? Like the Pucks on Net social media accounts, alter ego of Ryan.
That's fair. Thank you so much.
So there you go.
Dave
back to my point. Dave's not a thing anymore.
He'll become a legend is all I'm getting at. Like people will be like, is it? Is it just like...
And then we'll be begging you to do Dave's voice.
Oh, I don't do Dave's voice. I was gonna say, it could be like Fight Club where Ryan is Dave and Ryan. It'll be wild.
It's I think our third week without Dave, which is understandable.
Mm-hmm.
But by the fourth week, we could just bring somebody new in and say, "This is Dave from Ottawa."
The role of Dave is now played by
with a live studio audience.
Well, it's like it's an audio thing. It's like I recently watched a newer episode of The Simpsons, and a bunch of the voices don't sound familiar to me, but because they probably gradually brought them in, it was not as jarring for most people as it was for me.
You know, from like the first season of Family Guy when they switched Meg's voice.
And all of a sudden, Mila Kunis is there because that way she can get 2 paychecks from Fox, a 70s show and Family Guy.
Maybe Mila Kunis can call in from Ottawa.
Now playing the role of Dave.
You know, it would be big shoes to fill. She would be one of the few that could do it.
So, tune in next week when we find out if Mila Kunis is playing the role of Dave.
Or if somebody else beats her out in the auditions this week. Wild cards.
If Dave can't do the podcast next week.
Yeah.
And from what we know, that's a very real likelihood at this time, and that's fine. Very understanding. But if he can't do it next week, I should have somebody, a bullet in the chamber ready to go.
We just established that, Ryan. We're working on auditions before
No, but now I gotta
Monday.
go. I gotta go get one for Monday.
Yes, you do.
It's like we were treating it seriously, and Ryan just came to the realization, like, now, we really do have to do some casting calls.
Wait, this isn't a bit?
But maybe not an open casting
Idris
call.
Alba, maybe.
Yeah.
He's very buzzy right now.
Is that the guy that played Freddie Mercury?
Paul and I want no.
Get him. He could do every role.
He was the boss on The Office for a couple of weeks.
Oh, okay.
Oh, he's the handsome guy who hosted SNL last week.
Yes.
There you go.
John Maloney.
Charles Minor.
No.
Charles. That's not Charles. That was crap.
How do you not know who Idris Elba is?
It is.
That was Charles Minor?
That was one of his first, big-ish noticeable roles. I actually double-checked because I was like, I'm pretty sure that was him. And then when he was on SNL, I Googled it because he said, I don't do comedy. And I'm like, wasn't he on The Office?
He was the least funny character ever in The Office. He was the PMAC of The Office. The comedy foil.
You think you're funny, Ryan? I'm gonna start treating you like Charles Minor treats Jim.
I think sometimes that would be a very.
Everybody's gonna get picked on today.
It's a real pickaroni
I
kind of
did
show.
something shameful.
Oh, that's right. Thanks for joining us. Let's go. Thanks for joining us wherever you guys from. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at PucksOnNetCA or PucksOnNetCa. And if you want to support the show monetarily, you can head on over to patreon.com/PucksOnNet, where you can pledge a couple of bucks. And I forgot to do this last week, and I'm going to include it this week, and that we are the good luck chuck of Patreon, of podcasts that you can pledge money to on Patreon, because if you do, you will either be proposed to or you will propose to somebody, and either time it will be a success.
And also, if you pledge some money, we will make your announcements. We'll also do proposals and happy birthdays, anniversaries, basically anything.
It's like the news when old people turn 100. That's free. You have to give us money. It's not a lot of money, though, Paul. It's just
but we will read your messages.
For couple of bucks. We're not supposed to say anything. We're supposed to keep it on the hush hush because she's worried her mother will find out, but I don't think she listens to this show. So Allison's mother, your daughter's engaged, and she's a Patreon backer. She's our delightful listener from Oklahoma, and former NCAA goalie, and she just got engaged. That's the third Patreon.
Congratulations!
That's the third Patreon backer this year.
Congrats.
Yeah.
We feel like we've had a part in all of that.
So you're
3 for 3.
You're impressive that you're part of a group, not impressive that you got engaged. That's just, expected. You're awesome. I felt like what I said could have been misconstrued. I'm sorry.
It was headed there.
I say a lot of things like that. I'm kind of like the Jim Halpert of the podcast.
He's more of a big day-to-day kind of guy.
Yeah.
Now I'm so excited to introduce the podcast because Geeta got in trouble today. My name is Ryan Chapp. I'm going to be your host for the evening, and I'm fresh off driving from Vancouver to Surrey 5 times today.
Oh, my God.
Joining my immediate left on her couch.
I only tried to do it once today, and I failed.
Geeta, what did you do today? Sorry, what did you do today, Jeff Gordon?
No. Not what did I do today. What did I get today?
What did you get?
I got a speeding ticket.
How much?
Wow.
I think it was about $130. But if I pay it in like 10 to 30 days, I wasn't really listening. It'll be reduced by $25.
So first, wait, it'll be reduced by what?
I don't think it'll be reduced by yeah, that's right. Please send us money.
I'm going to pay for Geeta's
infraction.
So you weren't paying attention to what the officer told you your ticket was worth.
We didn't even.
Paying
we
attention.
barely talked to one another. He just asked for my driver's license. He didn't even ask for my registration.
You didn't even pay attention to the posted speed in the school zone.
I wasn't in a school zone. If you were wondering where I was on like first.
Near the school?
No, near the car wash.
And PMAC, you're here.
Those school zones are a little tricky.
You want to tell them how fast I was going?
Were we doing 75 and a 50?
Yeah.
That's BS. I lost my license when I had my N in Abbotsford because I was doing 70 and a 50 with an extra person in the car.
Right. And you got the N, but I don't. And I'm like, that's only 15. Like, 15 is barely anything. If I was going 15 kilometers an hour, I'd hardly be moving.
Isn't it 50? This is the speed limit 50?
Yeah.
So it was 25.
I was going, okay, 25. If I was going 25 on the road, I'd hardly be moving.
That's true.
I mean, that's not exactly how speeding works.
Sometimes you got places to go.
Yeah, to work.
Well, thank you very much, Mario Andretti. I'm glad you made it home in one piece.
I am too.
It was a big weekend for the Formula One fans out there.
PMAC, how are you doing? You were sick this week.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty much over it. Still a little raspy if you hear that on the mic.
I just thought you sounded extra sexy.
Okay, well, whatever does it for you.
Hey.
Awkward. Okay.
I got everything. I wanted to make sure that I got that off the bat. I had handwritten notes here. We're watching the Canucks play the Chicago Blackhawks, and the Chicago Blackhawks are still in it, somewhat.
But so are the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, that's the downside to this game, and they are currently leading 2-1, and they are really really screwing with the people such as myself that will sit at work and run the draft simulator.
Okay.
And it's getting more and more depressing as it goes on.
Now I know what you do at the office all day.
Yeah. Click 7, click 7, click 6, click 4. Okay, 4. But the good news is Jack Hughes has now fallen down to second, allegedly.
Okay.
So it might be easier for the Canucks to trade up to get their big hometown moment, Paul.
That happened to Jason Spezza as well.
Did it?
He did. He was touted to go number 1 forever and then fell to Kovalchuk.
That happens more often than you'd think. We had that a couple years ago.
Seth Jones did it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Seth Jones fell. Yeah, I was thinking the 1-2 with Nico going first overall. He sure.
Yeah,
okay.
it's Nolan Patrick.
And Nolan Patrick,
right.
who, again, some people are like, oh, he hasn't performed like Pettersson or even Hischier. And he was supposed to be first overall. But it's sort of like, he's still 19, 20 years. So he still could be a dominant power forward.
You could go 36th overall and be real dominant.
Guys, this is a young man's NHL. And if you don't have it figured out by your 19th birthday,
it's never going to happen.
Just start learning how to back check and play third, fourth line minutes because that's all you're going to be good for. That's
right.
That's the harsh reality we're just going to give you on this show.
Yep, there's nobody on the Chicago Blackhawks roster that was a highly touted prospect, underachieved, and is now being very successful.
Isn't that like everybody on that team?
Well, a couple of guys they brought in from Arizona earlier this year.
Yeah, they decided to see if they could recreate that junior magic, and it worked out. And DeBrincat and
I
Dylan
thought they were
Strome.
trying to recreate whatever magic they had in the desert.
Oh, yeah.
And even Perlini, who was sort of the throw-in in that trade, was the second star in the NHL last week. I think he got 6 goals in 3 games or something.
Well, that's what happens when you play the Toronto Maple Leafs. You're going to rack up those points. Segue. So all hell's breaking loose. The sky is falling. Again, I hate to draw parallels.
The spreadsheets aren't making sense anymore.
No. If you haven't seen it's just everything went so perfectly right for the Toronto Maple Leafs for the last 2.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe about a year and a half. But it all came crashing down when you saw Kyle Dubas just rubbing his eyes like, what the fuck am I doing? In the press box in Ottawa. They had basically a terrible 6 days. And let me bring up some stats here. 23 goals against they gave up in those 4 games last week. Anderson was pulled twice against the Lightning, which is expected because they're an amazing team, and the Chicago Blackhawks, which was unexpected because they're not as good as the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Right.
But they
nobody is as good as the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Well, there is a stat that they are allegedly the best team in the salary cap era, which it's hard to doubt.
Right.
But I think the real cause for concern, in Toronto, if Austin Matthews doesn't score a beautiful goal and do his wrist flip to get the high fives, everybody kind of panics. But they got the shit kicked out of them by the Ottawa Senators, who I think Dave was playing for them.
Okay.
That's the spoiler.
Yeah.
He's playing for the Senators, and that's why
he's exhausted from carrying that team.
Yeah, and he's like, Monday's here again. Just give me one more week.
That Stone trade really worked out for Dave.
But they're terrible.
They did have Eric Brandstrom up. He played his first NHL game.
Yeah.
And if we know anything from Twitter in the last couple weeks, is that if your name is Eric something Strum, or in that realm, you're gonna be a damn good defenseman.
Yeah, and the first 6 games or so for Goodbranson in Pittsburgh, it's totally been just that good, if not better.
Like a Sid doppelganger.
Exactly. They have not come down to earth. They aren't. They haven't started losing some games and not looking the best. So Goodbranson, late pick for that Norris Trophy. Disagree, Paul?
A write-in
candidate.
We're still talking about Eric Eric Brandstrom in Ottawa, now that he's filling in for Tommy Shabbat.
Is there going to be an opportunity where those two are going to be on the same defensive pairing together?
Wouldn't that be something?
I mean,
that would be right up there with the Lyndon Langdon Lindgren line from the Canucks back in the day.
you got to be on your A game if you're going to be calling that broadcast.
Oh my gosh!
Okay, so how many games did the Leafs lose?
They went 1-3. Now,
Okay.
like if you go to,
But these were blowouts.
they're not blowouts, but like okay, so Tampa Bay.
5-0 is a blowout.
Well, they went down 5-0.
Oh, I see.
I believe you sent me a LOL Maple Leafs text at some point on Wednesday night.
Okay.
And I was like, how bad could it be? They're playing the Blackhawks, and they were down 5-1.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, you look at this, the Tampa Bay Lightning are supposed to be your measuring stick game because they're the best, and let's see just how good the Maple Leafs are. And they looked abysmal. And then they lost to Chicago, who was fighting and clawing for a playoff spot. They beat the Philadelphia Flyers in the most flyery type of way, a 7-6, like down 3 goals multiple times.
A gritty win.
It was, well, I mean, yeah, it was a gritty win for the Leafs. But then Saturday was just almost embarrassing.
Okay.
Do we as a West Coast podcast, are we concerned about these Maple Leafs because they're so lovable, they're so fun, they're so fancy stats, they're so fresh face?
I'd like Paul's take on this.
Yeah.
There's a couple things to consider. The big thing that's jumped out to me as we're talking here about this big collapse by the Maple Leafs and the expectations and such. Going into the season, I don't think anybody figured Toronto would be like, at best, they'd be a dark horse Stanley Cup threat. I don't think people thought they were favorites by any chance.
They were until the Lightning got about 25 points ahead of every team.
But were they, or was it because they're in Toronto? It goes along with, I remember one of the panels in the last 2 weeks, they went off about how Frederik Andersen is probably the best goalie in the NHL in their opinions. And I was like, he's good.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd put him in the best.
But you're right. They're in Toronto, and they suddenly became kind of feel good in the last few years.
And they were a good team.
Yeah.
I would label them almost more like, you could even compare them to like a Washington last year, where it's like nobody expected them to win the Stanley Cup, but they wouldn't be surprised if it did happen necessarily. So I think they did have a good start to the season.
I think
people raise the expectations even more so. And now that they're playing maybe a little below expectations, but the record indicates they're going to end probably roughly where people would have expected in the summer going into this thing.
Okay.
I mean, they're kind of doing about where I would have expected them to finish in the playoff picture, and they'll probably do what I expected, where they might be able to squeak out a first-round win, and I know some people will laugh hysterically at that because...
No, they're winning. They're going to beat Chicago.
Boston?
They're going to beat Boston.
What?
Because I'm thinking of my own...
PTSD?
No, that too. We're going back to Boston for Game 6.
I mean...
Put Corey Schneider in to start.
they're only 4 points behind the Boston Bruins.
And the Bruins are a great team, but they're not like... They're another team that, like, if they won, it wouldn't be horrifyingly surprising, but they're not expected to win the Stanley Cup this year. Neither team is...
Yeah. I mean...
And both teams are very likely, 99% going to lose to Tampa Bay in the second round. So
99. What a lock.
On the flip side of that, we've seen Tampa lose.
We haven't seen this Tampa lose. They barely lost it all this year.
They don't like to. It's like they can't. It's a physical impossibility.
Yes, they have 116 points. I might have seen some stats. I get real smart real fast. It was on the TV.
Oh yeah. But they entered the Leafs entered the season with this embarrassment of riches. Like, we've already got Matthews, we've already got Marner, we've already got Nylander, Sortov, we've got Marlowe.
So you're winning the cup on paper.
And then you enter in John Tavares.
Yeah.
And you're like, my God, we're gonna win every game
ever.
We're going to score 7 goals a game, and as long as Freddie Anderson stops 6, we're going to be fine. That worked well against the Philadelphia Flyers, who have a 14-year-old goalie and a mystery box defense of prospects that big names, but they don't have they done much. But against a real team, against teams that are trying their damnedest to win.
The Ottawa Senators.
Yeah,
they're just trying to stay in this league.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at you had it from the Senators where they beat the shit out of them 6-2, and then you had from the Canucks who put every ounce of energy in that. They're a quadruple A NHL team, they're a quadruple A team, and they were somehow to beat them. Some were somehow able to beat them, so it's like they have problems showing up to those games.
See, that Senators game, though, they had Anders Nilsson in net, and as you know, he was my lock to win the World Championships last season, so he's their secret weapon. Ottawa's had a few big games lately from him.
Ball's building an all-star team.
It's mostly Tampa Bay Lightning with Anders Nilsson as a backup.
Castaways, yes.
Louis Domingue, you're out of here, pal.
The Quebec City Castaways. That's my new club.
Dave, I was talking to Dave about the Maple Leafs because he made a very good point.
Dave, you mean the voices in your head?
Yeah, he's actually he's live. He's alive on Twitter right now.
Oh, okay.
He's in a Hart debate, a heartfelt Hart Trophy debate with a handful of people.
Oh, okay. A Hart debate.
He is a Hart debate, but
he's doing that right now instead of calling in.
He has to be really quiet.
Right. Okay.
He works in a library now.
He knows you can walk out of a room with a cell phone, right?
He's the only one there. They don't have they don't have a shutdown real checking line. They don't have a fourth line. They don't have proper penalty killers. Mm-hmm. And, you're not supposed to go out and pay big money like for your Jay Beagles or your Antoine Roussels, but at the same time, you are supposed to go out and find your Manny Malhotras and your Rafi Torreses and your Yannick Hansons to always bring it back to the Canucks.
Manny Malhotra made some pretty good money for what he did, but he did put up offense. So
yeah.
And he's still employed.
But it's like for bottom six guys, you have Nazem Kadri.
Mm-hmm.
And
for your traditional bottom six roles, yeah.
But the problem with the Maple Leafs are they don't play defense and they don't break down. If you watch that game against Ottawa, if you've ever played NHL 19 with somebody that's really lazy and they're just throwing their stick around like this, which is if you watch the Leafs play the Senators, that's what they do. They just lazily stick check and then they sit and hover around the blue line, waiting for their USSR pass, and they're gone. Like there's a lot of things wrong with that team.
Yeah, like I said, it's not a perfectly constructed, finished project from what I saw going into the season.
Yep.
And I knew they were going to be a lot of fun to watch. But yeah, I think they're roughly doing what I expected. And I feel like the people that are getting really upset, worked up about it now,
the
are
Leaf
the ones
fans
that bought into all of the over optimistic views that are thrown around. Because, a ton of the media we see on Sportsnet are all based in Toronto. Mm-hmm. And even if they're trying not to lean towards that way, if you spend a lot of time around a team, you can see the positives amongst the negatives.
Right.
And media generally, I think, in hockey, there's a few that are super negative about everything, but there's a lot of they're just trying to pump tires, essentially, which is fine. Like, it's supposed to be fun. If you're presenting it as, you don't want to be overly critical constantly. And I feel like Toronto probably gets more of a boost, which causes their already starved for success fan base to have that much more hope in the future. And I'm still looking at them going, like, even if they do have to give up one or two key pieces in the next couple of years because of the salary cap, they're still building up to something ultimately. And I didn't think this was going to be this.
They have gone out of their way to cling to those pieces.
And overpay for those pieces.
Yeah.
It's a matter, though, of like...
And they have some big picture plan in order to hang on to everybody. They don't need two other lines.
If you're not going to sign those contracts, though, what are you going to let the guys go for nothing? Like, no, the idea is you re-sign them, and then as other price tags come up, you're going to move them out. You may move them out at a loss, but you'll still be getting more out of that than you would be letting somebody potentially just RFA sign them away or offering them anything.
You trade Patrick Marleau to a team trying to make the salary cap floor. And then that
would be an easy one initially.
But that being said, the Ottawa Senators are also apparently going to get Milan Lucic and Louis Eriksson and Patrick Marleau to have one hell of a rounded out third line.
And watch them come out of nowhere to rip it up legitimately.
Well, if you don't like us, we're going to show you. That was Lucic, by the way.
Anyway, but yeah, even if they're in salary cap trouble, they're going to start moving bodies out and getting a bunch of quality guys in. And I've said this in the past, I think one of the best things they could do is turn some of these one or two offensive talents when they decide who they want to keep, who they want to move, into high-end, their first choice bottom six forwards types of guys. Canucks in 2011 were really high on Manny Maltrees, a guy who can still put in 30 to 40 points.
But they didn't
But
trade.
is one of your best. I know it was a free agent signing, but you can go after assets that you want to fill in those holes that we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
When you end up moving those guys, and you're still going to only see Matthews and Marner get better theoretically.
Yeah.
Even John Tavares, as these players around him that are so much younger get better, they're only going to make him look better, even if he's getting a little older in years.
Mm-hmm.
He's pretty old. He's almost 30.
Well, depending on who you talk to,
This
there's
is a 19-year-old's NHL now.
That's right.
there's constantly these tweets going around like the most successful year for an NHLer I keep hearing is 24, 25? Somebody keeps
Really?
throwing out stats-wise.
There are defensemen that haven't even made it into the league at that point.
Yeah, there's still Princeton boys writing exams when they're even in the league yet.
Well, and I still look at that, even if you're looking at that as right now, statistically where it's working out, that's sort of the peak, and you're still going to get, 4 or 5 years on either end of that, ideally, depending on how they play, that they're still going to be very high-end players. So if you're picking up a 25-year-old, you're still going to get 4 or 5 years until they hit their 30s when, as I know, you just start falling apart once you hit 30.
Well, that's true. I mean, after this show, I'm going to go get on my foam roller and roll my tight hips out. So
he's
can
not
walk.
even joking.
No,
he's
he's
doing
not.
that tonight.
I have some lunges I have to do with my foam roller and a figure eight stretch. It's rough, and I'm only 31. What I don't really necessarily agree with those stats, because what type of high-end player peaks at 24 and then just is going down? We're in a modern era of the NHL that if you're a high-end player,
Ryan Kessler.
no, Ryan Kessler was still at his best 2.5 years ago.
All right.
But you make a good point of those Dustin Brown type of players.
Those players who played hard.
And then got big contracts or playing hard, and their bodies started shutting down.
I can't remember exactly how that whatever number was, and I'm even just throwing out, it was somewhere in that neighborhood. If you're looking at a whole career, it may not account for the fact players may actually peak around 26, but they drop off more dramatically than the slow build to their peak.
Yeah.
So that would affect it to make it look, when you get
I
the
hear you.
numbers and stuff, I can see it. When a guy's in his mid-20s, that might be where he's potentially most effective. But yeah, you're still going to get, until most guys get 28, 29, that's when the overly physical players like Lucic or I'm trying to think who else.
Overly
Richards.
physical or overly slow?
The players that rely more on their big body attributes. When you talk,
I'm gonna get you.
but yeah, skating is something that if you're not at the top of your game when you're at your peak anyway,
Right.
it drops off dramatically sometimes, and players aren't ready for that. Where you can still play in the NHL if you're not the fastest guy. It's tough. You have to understand that you're not the fastest guy and play safer positionally and stuff. But the alternative to that is working out and try to build speed as much as you can. The Sedins, I feel like they got faster until 32 or so. They really worked hard because they weren't fast skaters to begin with.
No.
So there are ways potentially.
Right.
They got better and better as their coaches got better, but as their coaches got worse and more inexperienced, the Sedins started getting worse.
But yeah, somewhere around
Interesting how
30
that
or
works.
31, I feel like was maybe the fastest they got. And then there was a dramatic, people are going to remember the last few years and be like, Paul, you're insane. But it was there was a dramatic drop off once they got to a point. But they had to work hard just to get to be fast skaters to
Do you
begin
know
with.
how amazing you'd have to be to succeed under Willie Desjardins?
Oh, it worked for...
Can we call up Dustin Brown?
It worked for...
Anze Kopitar, he's having a pretty rough year this
It
year.
worked for... Ilya Kovalchuk?
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, we could have some guests on. We can ask them if they're free to speak. Maybe wait till Willie's been dismissed.
You could distort their voices.
This is Dave. Dave actually just sent in a question.
Okay.
And it's a Canucks question, so we could segue that way.
Okay.
And he's watching the game right now in Ottawa.
Okay.
He's not in jail.
Yeah.
Pucks on
Where
Dave.
is one tweet?
Pucks on Dave asks, are Brisebois and Sautner better than Goody and Derek Pouliot? Real question for Pucks on Net. I will hang up and listen to your opinion. First time, long time, by the way. PMAC, you're high on the Sautner train.
Sautner and Brisebois. I feel like we haven't seen enough of either of them to really say a ton. taken for example, Eric Goodbranson in Pittsburgh.
Counter argument. We saw a lot of Derek Pouliot and a lot of Eric Goodbranson to make a bad opinion on them.
I didn't say we hadn't seen enough of them. But Eric Goodbranson in Pittsburgh's an interesting one to me. Because you look at everyone's getting all riled up like, oh, it was the Canucks' problem. Look at what Eric Goodbranson can do when he's in some other city.
This is performance art. This is PMAC recreating the Canucks.
They're
Twitter.
mad as hell. And
I was talking about how he's not
anymore.
a passionate sports
Yeah,
fan.
Paul is. This is performance art. You can see him at the Fire Hall Community Center,
shaking my hands, mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take it anymore. I watch a lot of old movies. Anyway. No, it's one of those things like, especially when a player initially gets to a new team, and if it's a team that has a lot of talented guys like they have in Pittsburgh, I still want to see Eric Goodbranson long-term in Pittsburgh before I buy into the fact that his game has changed as entirely as some people are suggesting.
I feel like I need to see Eric Goodbranson in like Carolina or Arizona to really see what he's like as a player.
Well, he was on a pretty bad team in Florida, and all the old guard was like, "My God, what are you getting rid of Eric Goodbranson for? He's the best."
That's what they say to make Vancouver take something.
And then we're like, "You want Jared McCann?" Okay.
Jared McCann's another good example of a guy who showed up in Pittsburgh. They put him on Sidney Crosby's line. He's been pretty darn good for like 3 or 4 of those 6 or 7 games he's got with Crosby, and people are losing their minds. How could the Canucks give up on Jared McCann because he's put up like 4 points in 7 games with Sidney Crosby?
Only 4 and 7?
It's a little more than that, but it's not a lot.
No, but like Jerry is gonna have to play some big minutes because Geno Malkin. We're all on a nickname show here.
Yeah.
Jerry is going to have to play big minutes because Gino got cross-checked in the torso by Bertuzzo. And so we're really going to see what our man Jer is going to bring. And we're also going to see what our man Eric Goodbranson's going to bring with a big key piece of that. And as much as we watch the Pittsburgh Penguins rise up from the ashes of beauty draped in the riches of former Canucks, now we're going to see what the team can really do when, one of the best players in the game ever.
That's right. Like, I totally expect Jared McCann to step up.
Yeah, like start watching the games now. If you're a concerned Canucks fan, this is where it really matters.
Those were the missing pieces.
It'll be interesting to see though, because he did have some good games, and then I've watched the last couple Penguins games a little more closely and gone, McCann really hasn't been that impressive, and he's playing with Crosby, and they weren't really getting numbers, and he hasn't been bad, but I haven't been shocked into seeing this superstar player some people on Twitter seem to be making.
Well, have you seen that GIF?
Which one?
That one
you had
GIF?
one good move?
Yeah, it's just like the Pedersen shootout goal.
Oh, well then.
It's the greatest thing you've ever seen. Well, they did lose, and they lost to the Devils, so maybe it's not that good.
I hope they're both successful, but I want to see long-term, at least to the end of the season and into the playoffs, what they can do. And sort of what I was trying to get back to with those original two. We're talking about Breezeball. We're talking about Sautner in Vancouver. I don't know if I'm ready to say they're better than Goodbranson and Pouliot, but I'm certainly there to say from what we saw this season or the last couple seasons, they're at least as good as for a hell of a lot less money.
And we're not missing
And they're
them.
much younger
than
what we got out of Pouliot and Goodbranson with this Canucks roster.
Right.
And that's another side of it, too. Goodbranson is naturally going to look better if he's playing a smaller role on a better team. Same can be said about almost any player. If you put them in a easier role that's more appropriate to their skill set, they'll be more likely to succeed.
And here's the counter argument to not pooping on Goodbranson, because he appears and likely is the nicest man ever.
Yeah.
They had one of the Humboldt Broncos survivors come to meet his favorite player, Sidney Crosby. And Sid was showing him all around the place, and then he met Letang, and then he meets Eric Goodbranson, and he's I always like when these like hockey players like, hi, I'm Eric.
Yeah.
Like I am a guy.
Yeah.
And just that's how they introduce themselves. Like I don't notice that enough, or if they do that,
okay.
but
Yeah.
I quite like that. And so he's talking to the former Bronco player, and it's like, have you asked Sid for his autograph yet? And he's like, no, not yet. He's like, yeah, I've been I've been biting my tongue. I've only been here like 6 weeks or whatever, or not even that, but I've been wanting to ask him almost every day. So I thought that was really cute.
That's cute.
He is a good guy. I wanted him to succeed. I like good guys. Like I was a big fan of Lucas Pisa just as a personality.
We want everyone to succeed.
I want this nerdlinger from Princeton to succeed. Doesn't mean he's going to, but we want him to. How many players have the Canucks signed that they didn't want him to succeed? We wouldn't want to. You didn't want him to succeed?
I didn't say me. You asked if the Canucks wanted him to succeed.
I meant the fan base. They don't want him to succeed.
I'm not sure what they're doing.
I was getting at as you're saying, like, there's certain personality types that are just like you see them you see them being nice, especially when I get to see some of the guys in the hallway after the game. Like Jay Beagle's a good example. Every game he's got somebody in there after the game, like a group of kids, and he's got them outside and inside the locker room, and he's spending a ton of time with them every single game. Like, I don't know, he's got some kind of setup. And you see a guy like that, when everyone complains about what he costs, I start to go, maybe there are some intangibles in the way he seems to fit in with the teammates. Like, I get maybe they did overpay. Maybe it's a little more overpay than you should have overpaid. But maybe you do pay a little bit extra to some of these guys. If it's not that much, it's something for some of these extra things you get out of, like, just good human beings.
Right.
The answer for a player in Canucks fans do not want to succeed ever is Brandon Sutter.
I mean, we wanted him to succeed. He just didn't.
Well, he was hurt. And then he came back, and then he was hurt again. He's like a Chris Tanev.
But man, if he succeeded, we'd be all over that.
Oh, yeah. Real old boy from Alberta. No, he's American. Chris Tanev.
Chris Tanev? No, he's Canadian.
No, but that was the...
I thought you were talking about Sutter. I'm like...
Paul made it defeated, like, oh, man. Look, when I said Chris Tanev, who just got injured again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, can we say injury prone?
He's the new Sammy Salo, unfortunately.
Yeah, without the big booming shot from the point.
I mean, not exactly the same player, but just in the can't catch a break.
But if that team makes the playoffs, they need Chris Tanev.
Chris Tanev's all of a sudden going to be quarterback in the power play. I don't even know I could do this.
You never know. Like Chris Tanev takes a lot of abuse normally.
Yeah.
Yes, he does take a lot of abuse on the ice.
Is he the lesser brother?
Oh,
the lesser Tanev brother?
A couple of years ago, it wouldn't have been an argument. But now, I mean, Brandon Tanev plays, and Chris Tanev is like he lives in a walking boot.
So keeping with tradition.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go with give me Brandon Tanev if he can play 82 games.
Yeah, I mean, are you comparing? Yeah, if you're getting
We're comparing
a guy
apples to
with
oranges.
injury history,
we're comparing Tanevs to Tanevs here, offense to defense, greasy hair to greasy hair,
quality of player,
late bloomer to late bloomer,
versus versatility. But yeah, no, I didn't know when Tanev went down that time. At first, you go like, I've seen him go down and come back and finish a game before. Although he's missed games after that sometimes when that happens.
Yeah.
He was back for such a short amount of time that you almost didn't notice that he was back.
Who's that guy?
He tried to come back in the game with the broken toe, right?
Yeah, it was a pinky toe.
Okay.
No, I'm making that up. That would be.
I thought it was a broken foot or toe.
Yeah.
Anyway, he went down, left the ice immediately.
Okay.
Like I was in press row and some people missed it, so I was filling some people in. Came back, was skating figure eights during a TV timeout.
Yeah.
trying to like test it out. And people were like, "Oh, is he gonna come back?" And he was trying to come back, and we find out after a broken bone in his foot, and he's still trying this. But then he was just like shaking his head, and as he went to the bench, he had to use both hands to like push himself up over that little lip when you're getting onto the bench.
Yeah.
And I just felt for like he was trying, but he's done like for the year, and it could be like Sammy Salo, where even if you play however many years, like the team can only expect 35 games or so out of you, and they hope it times out so that you come back for the playoffs healthy and you get an extra cap boost there. But
have you seen the score here, Paul? They're going to the playoffs. They're going to take on those Calgary Flames.
What are they, like 7 points back?
It's like 10 points back now.
It's like they have to go 11-0 or whatever.
And the other teams would have to lose a lot of games.
11-0 going into the playoffs. They'd be the hottest team.
That's something. Hey,
we got Chris Tanev back. Oh no.
can you imagine? This is not going to happen, folks. Don't get your hopes up. But can you imagine if they went into the playoffs and then steamrolled Calgary in 4 games because they haven't lost a game in 3 weeks?
If the LA Kings can do it, the Vancouver Canucks can do it.
No.
I mean, and they would have done it without Chris Tanev, so they don't technically need Chris Tanev.
So when they get him, he's just all gravy, and
he's
then
a bonus, yeah.
and then he gets hurt, and then they're
And
down.
it's fine.
Yeah, just a matter.
And Sven Baertschi is not playing in the Chicago game, as far as I understand.
But apparently he's skating.
But he could be playing today.
Yeah.
So that's something.
Because everybody had written him off.
A lot of people were wondering if he was just going to retire because he's had this unfortunate concussion situation.
Anytime a player is taking his time recovering from a head injury like Rick Nash, you think the automatic worst.
Yeah.
Comes back and has to leave again like we just saw out of him. So it's great to see him doing that. And he wouldn't be doing that if, retirement was on the table in all likelihood. It's just a matter of he gets to test it out here before the summer and hopefully get a restful summer and come back. And he's the type of guy, if he got a full season in, I think he would surprise a lot of people and be right up there with the big three in Vancouver for stats.
So, Paul, we're going to take a break from hockey because I have a story to tell.
Ooh.
Fine.
Geeta already has heard this story, so she's going to pretend like she hasn't heard it before.
For like the 12th time.
With the 12th?
I mean, I don't know what story it is.
It's not a burger anecdote.
Okay.
Actually, I pronounced anecdote. I think I said anecdote on the podcast on the cold open last week.
Okay.
And I wanted for you to compile a list of things I say wrong.
Oh,
like
you have a good one.
Glamoring. Yeah. She's glamoring for attention.
Glamoring.
Glamoring.
I didn't even know what that was supposed to be.
No, because that one he would text, and I'm like, I think you're misusing a word.
Everybody has their blind spots.
Yeah.
And this is not to do with speaking of blind spots, but I noticed that we usually save all our good stories for Patreon.
Yeah. So now he's giving it away for free.
Well, some people you got to hook them. And I had a hell of a... Well, you were covering the New Jersey Devils on Friday night. I was... ever been to I was at arguably the crappiest yet, most delightful bar in Vancouver called the Brick House.
Where is the Brick House?
The Brick House is on Main Street in the exceptionally seedy part, just after the viaduct.
Okay, yeah.
Near the London pub there.
Yeah.
Sounds like a place Mike Comrie would own.
Yeah, it's...
it's like up and coming.
No, it's been around forever.
No, the area is up and coming. There's a whole bunch of like bougie little restaurants.
Yes, there are.
Yeah.
So while I was there, I went there with a girl I've been seeing, and we sat at the end of the bar. And I now, because I'm older, I pick my establishments based on volume. And Paul can attest to this because last weekend, him and I went to the Den, the site of the 6th annual Pucks and a Christmas party, and we marveled in how quiet it was.
And it was still pretty loud, but it's all relative.
But we're not like, huh? What? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, we're talking like that, but we can hear each other.
So I sit down, and it's quiet enough, and I'm watching the game.
Yeah.
And there's another couple at the bar. And it's an older guy and a woman that kind of looks like Demi Moore after Ashton Kutcher.
Oh, yeah. Speak of the devil.
Speaking of what, Manny?
Yeah.
Manny Malhotra.
And so I can subtly hear like an argument and bickering. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what are they talking about? Let's try and listen. I keep hearing this. I keep hearing her say, "Why would you wear that? Why would you wear that?" I'm like, what does she wear? And then I'm like, maybe it's a ring. Maybe he's married. And sure enough, because it's the appropriate volume in there, he is married, and she's very upset about this because he didn't tell her about this. And
yeah,
and so
I can attest to that.
And so we're listening, and this bickering goes on, and she didn't hear about it, and he didn't tell her about it, and we're like, well, how did they meet? And like every question that we asked ourselves, they would answer it through their very loud and vocal bickering and fight. And it wasn't problematic. Anyway, there were such lines as as it wasn't a big affair, we never banged. So I'm like, oh, okay, now we're making the line. I'm like, okay, now we are upset with the man because he strung her along and whatever happened. And so then he's like, you know what? I've made a mistake and I'm going to leave. And then she is like, well, I think you should stay. And I think we should talk about this some more. And I'm like, well, why would she want to do that? And then as soon as he was thinking about it, she turned around to talk to another group of men at the bar. And I'm like, oh, man, now the tables have turned. Now she's glamoring for his attention. So he comes back, and I'm like, okay, maybe they'll work it out. And it proceeds to get even heated and then more drunken. And then finally he leaves. And I'm looking at Demi Moore after Ashton Kutcher, and I go, okay, I think she's going to try and meet whatever man she can find in this bar. And I'm with somebody, so I'm like, I hope it's not me. Although Demi Moore, very attractive woman. The actress.
Yeah.
Actually, this woman was...
She's beautiful.
Yeah. And then we look over, and right beside us at the bar alone is a very young man with a wedding ring on who I'm like 90% sure was a gay man. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, it's just like she shuffles two stools over, and she's right next arm in arm with him, and it becomes the whole life story, this and that, and shots are being ordered, and just like, whispering sweet nothings into his ear, and we could hear everything and see everything, Paul. And at one point, it's the arm around and the speak in, and his kind of face goes red of either embarrassment or flattery. And then finally, I guess he says no thanks to her, and she gets up and she puts on her coat. And then she starts staring at me. Mm-hmm. And like just staring like 1,000-yard stare at me. And the girl I'm with is like, I think she knows I think she knows we've been eavesdropping and somewhat making fun of them all night long. I'm like, no, that can't be the case. I would like to say at one point, you can't see this. You can only hear this, but I was literally like, my head was turned and I was looking at Michelle, and I'm looking more or less like I was cupping my ear with my hand trying to listen. Now there wasn't
You were basically at another table now.
Yeah, I'm like,
Ryan's a bit of a cartoon character at times. Yeah. I'm picturing this is one of those times.
She's like, you are very obvious. I'm like, am I? Oh shit. So
Ryan gets shushed a lot.
This woman, Demi Moore, is staring at us in like just 1,000-yard stare, like, oh man, it's on. So I kind of have my eye, got her in the corner of my eye, and then I look at her, and then she falls face down on the floor, Paul, and hits her head.
Oh,
and just right behind me.
Okay.
And then I go, and it goes from, oh, this is funny, to, oh shit. And so I pick her up and we put her on a chair, and then, she's not bleeding, and then all of a sudden heart to hearts with the woman I'm with. Yeah. And I look, the potentially gay gentleman looks at me, and I'm like, just go. Yeah. And then we tried to get her out of the bar, and we were going to walk her home, and then midway through she thought that she wasn't done yet. And that's when I gave my best dad speech, which I love giving dad speeches.
You kind of go from like feeling sorry to being like, well.
And so I'm like,
you're making your own choices now.
And I was like, I didn't catch your name. What is it? And she's like, what? And I'm like, my name's Ryan. What's your name? And she's like, it's blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, listen, Demi. And this is verbatim. I'm like, listen, Demi, you had a rough night.
Yeah.
You hadn't had a lot of wins tonight. Let's just cut your losses. Let's get you out of here. Let's walk you home. And let's just, like, you know what? You had a bad fall. You had a bad situation with a guy. Let's just end it there. Go to bed. And she looked at me and was like, no. And she ran back into the bar.
So you know exactly what it's like to be a father.
You know what? You never regret the nights you stay home and watch Netflix. I read that somewhere.
You save a lot of money.
Yeah.
Different type of regret sometimes.
Speaking of Demi Moore.
Yeah.
Who did Ashton Kutcher marry after her?
Mila Kunis. Now playing the role of Dave.
We've come full circle, folks.
Maybe Ashton Kutcher will be one of the other people that tries out this week for the role of Dave.
So no, that's like, well, it'll be the same Skype line, right? Like
Yeah.
they'll both be phoning from the
I
house.
guess so. You hate having multiple voices.
Back to the Canucks, Paul.
Sure.
Oh, we're talking hockey again?
Oh, come on.
That was a brief interlude. You're like, are we now on to the listener questions?
What do you want to talk about? Yeah, hockey. Yeah, I know about hockey.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
You don't know about Demi Moore falling drunk behind you in the bar?
No, I enjoyed the story. It was interesting.
Did you?
It was like 5 minutes for paying in the middle of the show.
Well, we used to do 5 minutes for paying in the middle of the show a lot, and that's what people seem to really like about us.
Oh, well. If you like that, then continue to tell us on Twitter. And if you didn't, tell us
there
that
was
too.
silence for the people that didn't pay for about 5 minutes.
Huh?
What are they talking about behind the curtain?
Do you want to know what's happening behind the curtain? I go, oh, man, my shepherd's pie didn't turn out too well. And that's what we all say. It's like we all came to the party with shepherd's pie anecdotes. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it got a little runny.
Elias Pettersson got elbowed in the face, Paul.
Is he injury prone, Paul?
I mean, they're not all the same type of injury, which is a good sign. And that wasn't an injury,
That's
really,
not a good
per
thing
se.
either. No.
He just took an elbow to the nose. It was a reckless move by... Who got him with that? Kreider?
Chris Kreider. Kreider.
Well, there were a couple of things that night that caused 5-minute majors to be called against the Rangers, and that was the one that was probably more warranting of a 5-minute major. The other one was more of like a wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah, Brandon Lemieux.
Worse injury. Totally, because it knocked Roussel out for the rest of the year. It's awful.
Did he get concussed on that?
Ugh.
I'm pretty sure, yeah, it was a concussion.
Yeah, and the knee. The knee is what's
Yeah, the
done
knee
for
went.
the season.
As well, so
when I saw those, they looked very like the Pettersson one is the play you're trying to remove from the game, which is unnecessary. What's the word I'm looking for here?
Reckless.
Reckless, thank you.
Okay.
For those listening, I just flailed my arms in the air, and Paul went, reckless.
It's like a high stick.
Yeah.
I mean, I go back to people remember the one in Vancouver of Cassian swinging his stick and smacking Gagne.
Yeah.
PK Subban, remember he had a lot of famous reckless swinging of the sticks in the playoffs?
You got to be
Right.
aware of where your stick is.
Carelessness.
So I was I'm like, that makes sense. Like, he elbowed him right in the face, and that
Okay.
could have been a lot worse. And then with Lemieux, I got the sense that it was zero tolerance for any contact with the head in that game. And while he didn't let up, and he did kind of, lead with he finished his
Didn't
check.
go out of his way to avoid potentially injuring Roussel there. I'm happier to see the NHL leaning that direction, where any head contact, if the players aren't trying to avoid it, it's a penalty.
Okay.
I'd rather see them go a little bit more intense with head injuries
Yeah.
than the
Yeah.
other direction. But yeah, that the intent was probably worse on the Kreider one, or even if the intent's not there, just the reckless behavior of it. Whereas Lemieux, part of it was probably his reputation or his family's reputation.
This is because of your dad, Brendan.
I was talking to some of the Rangers reporters after the game. There were a few of us
Yeah.
that were the last ones in the room afterwards filing things, and we were all kind of like, yeah, Lemieux's dealing with the reputation from 25, 30 years of crappy, mean-spirited Lemieux in the league, other than Mario.
Is he more of a gentle player?
He's not as angry as his old man was. Dino Ciccarelli
He's more of a Lady Bing type.
give him a year or two. We'll see where he's at. But
Okay.
no, he's got a bit of a hard-nosed, gritty
Yeah.
rep with him as
Okay.
well. So anyway, that was interesting. And in the post game, Elias was the last one to come out, and he was the only Canuck I got because I went to the Rangers room first, and one of the reporters on my side was bringing up so it looked like you took an elbow to the face. How bad was it, or what started into it? And from our angle on his right side, his nose looked fine, but he turned to this other reporter and myself, and his other side of his nose was red with blood crusted on the side and stuff. And she was like, "Oh,
that's like
you obviously were injured on the play." It was this abrupt.
That's like in Tommy Boy when David Spade hits Chris Farley in the face with that 2x4, and he's like, "Richard, is there a mark on my face? It doesn't hurt here or here, but right here.
And turns the head, and there's a big injury. Yes, that was what it was, essentially. He's like, yeah, no, I felt blood, and I went down because I was a little concerned. Anytime you get hit in the head and you feel blood start to pour.
Yeah.
And he's like, he was good on him because he was like, you know what? Hockey's a tough sport. I don't think the guy was trying to hurt me.
Right.
And he was defending Kreider, if anything, where like some people might be quick to jump on accusing this young, skinny Swede of playing the game too softly. He was like, no, Kreider was doing what he was supposed to be doing. You know, he had to go off because of concussion protocol, but he came back as soon as he could and didn't think Kreider maybe even deserved 5 minutes from what he said.
Right.
But
then
I'm glad they did because, you keep your elbows down. Like, there's no need for him to be swinging his arms around the same way there's no need for players to be swinging their sticks around.
But those are the two type of plays that, you know, you have definitely, and along with all of us, have been advocating to be out of to be removed from the game, and having the zero tolerance to don't hit a guy in the head like that in such a dangerous way, then it was warranted if that's what they're trying to do.
So, anyway, it was a busy night that night.
While we were recording, Dave is in an argument on Twitter with Mills.
I'm like, with us?
Yeah, so Paul, usually it's with Paul with a half-second delay, but this time it's Mills over who should win the Hart Trophy this year.
Okay.
So we'll pose this question because long time, first time, Dave from Ottawa. Paul.
Yeah.
Who should win the Hart Trophy this
Who are
year?
your three finalists for a Hart Trophy?
So if you're asking for three, I want to go through. I'm not someone to just brazenly throw out names
because I was thinking about it, so that's where that's why I can throw it on you. Where I was thinking one of them's playing in this game, in Patrick Kane, who's having an amazing year.
Yeah.
John Hockey in Calgary.
He's one that I would have thought of. I was also thinking Marc-Andre Fleury in Vegas, although I hate to say I told you so. But he's dealing with some injury trouble after playing so many gosh darn games this year.
Let's go to the Pucks on Net injury update desk. Ryan has an injury update.
All right.
Vegas, Marc-Andre Fleury, injured. Day-to-day, lower body injury. Max Lagacé, called up from Chicago Wolves. And Gerard Gallant, taxi cab firing coach, confirmed his absence, is not related to his wife's pregnancy. Tick, 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 tick. Now back to PMAC at the desk.
Hate to say I told you so. Was that just last week? It was
the last 3 weeks.
And I guess it was multiple times. And he's also a new father, which in and of itself will not cause your play to drop off. But it's just adding all these potential issues. And if you get enough of those building up, one of them's going to hit you.
Of course.
While you're down.
Malcolm Subban and the Knights barely beat the Edmonton Oilers last night.
Barely.
It was only a 3-goal win.
Thank God they didn't have a Toronto-like meltdown.
So, anyway, but I think we're avoiding the obvious pick down in Tampa Bay.
Yanni Gord.
Well, he's been great too, but I don't know if I put him up there yet. No, Steven's
Braden
old.
Point.
Steven is so old. He's going to retire next year.
We're just going to let Dave handle the Tampa fight.
Well, he's just handling it with Mills. And Mills is a positive guy. He's probably just as curious. And Dave's like, you son of a bitch for thinking it could be
Mills is handing out Hart trophies to everyone.
But you made a great point in that Marc-Andre Fleury, who is having one of the best years of his career ever.
Yeah.
And the Golden Knights, regardless of how stacked they are looking, there was a time where they weren't looking this good, and they weren't supposed to be so dominating. And then I also bring up that I brought up 17 Tampa Bay Lightning that are just a juggernaut of just.
That's a well-rounded team.
And in every year we have the argument that the Hart Trophy shouldn't go to McDavid. It shouldn't go to the best player ever, which is why when Taylor Hall won it, it was that's who should have won it because he was the most valuable player to that team.
To the Edmonton Oilers.
I'm going to make the argument that Nikita Kucherov, who's going to have 120-point season, which is amazing, is not the most valuable player to the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Just in the sense he's probably their most valuable player on the roster. But, when you get to the definition of the trophy, it's who is the most valuable player to their team. And I always go back to now it's 15, 16 years ago when Patrick Waugh was up for the Vezina and the Hart, as was Jose Theodore.
Right.
Yeah.
And I made the argument. I was interning. This was like way back because I was still in high school.
This
This
was-
was even further
Yeah.
back.
This wasn't a podcast, folks. This was the radio.
I was interning on Dan Russell's Sports
We
Talk.
were children.
And I brought up the argument during their pre-show meeting.
Yep.
I was like, so Jose Theodore is more valuable to Montreal than Patrick Roy is to Colorado, but Patrick Roy is the better goaltender. So if he was
Right.
in Montreal still, he would be easily the winner of both. But you could have one goalie win the Vezina as the best goalie, but then another goalie win the MVP because he's more valuable to his team. And they thought I was crazy and it would never happen. I'm like, it probably won't happen, but maybe it should happen.
Well, is it fair if you play on a complete team?
And we're talking about this is
There
the
you go.
best team in the
Yeah.
cap era. Like, if it's just there's it's I know, and I made the joke. The Art Ross and the Hart sound very
Right.
similar, but they're very different trophies.
Yes.
And
Kucherov is still having a dominant offensive year.
But the Art Trophy shouldn't be a consolation prize.
no, that's the Art Ross.
That's what I mean. Yeah, the Art Ross.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But
Sorry,
the
I
Hart.
said the Art.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm
Not
just
the
saying,
Hart.
this is not just a matter of a guy that wins out the race amongst. He is considerably ahead of everybody else in the race. So it's not just a matter of being the top scorer. It's showing that you're quite a bit better offensively than everybody else. And that is a huge factor in deciding if you are considerably better than everyone else in your position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big part of winning the MVP trophy.
Right.
He also could win the Hart for having most goals per dollar because his contract is so reasonable right now.
That could be a new contract in the era of cap space and
The Nerd Award.
nerd general managers, right? So best bang for your buck. Is that not a trophy
I
yet?
do hope Fleury gets nominated.
Yeah, and
Fleury was the one that to me was like, where would they be this year without him? They'd
Well-
be a very
Yeah,
good
exactly.
team, but I don't know if they'd be where they are right now in the standings.
But
without him.
he means something special to that team.
And if you've listened to this podcast the last 3 weeks, folks, we've been saying, what's this team going to be like without Marc-Andre Fleury?
They should be
We're
handling
about
them
to
with
see.
kid gloves, especially now that they're pretty much certainly into the playoffs.
They should put him in
Knock
one
on
of
wood.
those inflatable bubbles that horribly injured you.
Yeah,
Wait,
that's
wait.
the worst idea I've ever heard. That's a big part of the new season of Arrested Development, but they're in the full bubble, so maybe that's better.
Oh,
Their
yeah.
playoff chances are just slipping.
Chicago's
As we
just
watch.
tied up the Vancouver
But at the
Blackhawks
same
game
time,
late.
the Black...
Chicago is their nemesis again.
And you two didn't seem to be paying a ton of attention, so I'll update you on what just happened. But one of the Chicago players got their blade of their stick stuck
Okay.
in the space under Brock's skate
Yeah.
and kept pulling at him
Oh.
and couldn't get it loose. And Brock was like, you could
Hey.
see him going like, hey, dude, slow the flip down.
You were swearing
You can use those
I
bad
know.
words.
You were swearing last week.
I'm trying to clean it up a little bit for the kids listening. You
For
know,
all you kids
all
out
you
there.
kids out there. Anyway, but he got, I think it was a holding call against Brock Besser when the guy got his stick jammed into Brock's skate, and Brock went to the official like, how is that not a hook? I'm not holding him. He literally stuck his stick in my skate so I couldn't get up. That's a hook.
We found his Achilles.
Speaking of Achilles,
Literally.
Speaking of Achilles, I just thought of a great idea because Dave's been so active watching the game but can't talk. Like, we should send him a live stream link. So he's just like,
I want to say this. I want to say that.
and he's just like, I gotta go. I gotta find a Starbucks.
I was talking about recklessness earlier in regards to that Pettersson elbow to the nose, elbow to Pettersson's nose.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of the stick throw during the penalty shot that Pettersson got to take against Dallas?
That didn't seem like I watched that.
It didn't infuriate me because
But you've written this team off.
When he
Well,
wants them to lose.
If this was September or October,
the preseason where it matters the most,
you'd be up in arms about something like that.
it doesn't.
If it was the playoffs, we'd be freaking out.
And if it was a penalty shot in the playoffs,
Yeah.
it'd be a different story. But he lost. He didn't throw his stick. He lost control of it and took it back. Like, maybe he meant to throw it, but he also had the wherewithal to pick it up immediately.
But
And
the
it-
rule isn't whether or not it's thrown on purpose.
Yeah.
that was reckless.
Enough about Bryan Adams breakthrough album. Okay,
But yeah, no, that it
I
didn't.
I haven't called you a race car driver in like an hour. So easy there, Dale Earnhardt
Hey, there's
Jr.
no need to throw Geeta under Elias Pettersson while he's on a penalty shot. Yeah, it didn't bother me so much at this point in the season, especially. Like, some people were freaking out. But It was a terrible call. And then the NHL doubling down during the game, John Garrett called and asked for the reason. They said, "Oh, it wasn't on purpose." But
you know how he called.
Did they change that phone number?
Yeah, I was gonna say, if
the
you
Boston Bruins tweeted out the
Yeah.
Toronto War Room number.
by accident, they forgot to blur it out in the penalty box where the officials are. And a bunch of people on Twitter or on Reddit, they phoned the number,
And they just kept hanging up on everybody.
but
apparently.
they didn't initially.
Oh.
They didn't
They
know why.
They talked to a couple people for a bit, like, "Hey, what's going on over here?" Like a Lucky Lou.
Is Kay Whitmore there? Can I talk to Kay Whitmore?
Don't you know his extension? I forgot it.
I don't think he works here anymore.
Just a second. He'll be right here.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, he called in and he asked for a reason. Oh, it wasn't on purpose. But the rule, it's kind of like a high stick. It's kind of like a hook.
Is it? I always thought it was a throw.
I thought it was a throw as well.
Multiple people posted the rule out of the book, and it says whether it's intentional or not, if a goalie throws or propels their stick at the
Right.
incoming player, it's an automatic goal.
And now it
Yeah.
was a penalty or a shootout.
It was a penalty shot.
Penalty shot.
Right. Yeah.
So-
That's bullshit. Yeah, that should be reviewable.
But yeah, the fact that John Garrett then during the game calls and the reason they give is crap. And then the next day they double down and go, "Well, ref made the right call. He didn't throw the stick on purpose." And it's like, no, you're avoiding.
Everybody's suddenly gonna lose.
Whoops. Oh.
That wasn't on purpose.
It does go in where, like, yeah, if you get a hooking call in this game, what's to stop Antoine Roussel next year from going, "I didn't hook him on purpose.
His knee.
Precedent has been set. He got his law degree over the summer.
His knee.
Night school courses."
I mean, his knee will stop him from doing that.
Okay.
Has he heard it?
Anyway.
Your joke was good too.
all right,
you
all
went to
right.
law school. All right, that's good. Two good jokes. Can we agree?
Yes, you both. Had
I just
very
lost
good
my train of
jokes.
thought. I was trying to make a point.
Precedent set.
He
But
was
Antoine
going
Roussel.
too fast.
Anytime, the NHL, doubles down, they don't even say we're sorry. They don't even have to say we're sorry. Just don't say anything. But when you go out of your way to be like, we made the right call because of this,
Yeah.
it's a bullshit answer.
Well, it's like in baseball. It's like, well, there's some strike zones are bigger than the others, and why? That's okay. Next game, we don't need to explain that. That's just how it is.
This was one I would have liked to see clarification, reference to the actual rule, but it didn't seem like that was going to happen.
We're on a bit of a time crunch this week, so I'm going to blast off a couple of these things here. Calgary Flames, first team in the West to clinch the playoffs. The Arizona Coyotes in a playoff spot. No player on the team has more than 15 goals. Only one player on the roster has more than 38 points on the season, up in 45. And they're in the playoffs. Well, with Calgary and Vancouver getting points, it's hard to say. And Joe Thornton on passing Stan Mikita in career points. He says, "I don't deserve to be up there with these types of guys." You mentioned those names. It's mind-boggling. I shouldn't be up there.
Well, that's just more of what I experienced when I tried to talk to him after the game when he passed Gordie Howe the other night, and he refused to talk to us. He's like, and
I swear to God, if anybody here mentions Gordie Howe, I'm going to punch him in the face.
it wasn't quite that.
When he passes Wayne Gretzky.
He'll do it by scoring 4 goals in a game.
Oh, jeepers.
And then he's like, let's not talk about that either.
One final thing. Jonathan Dolan has been playing on the San Jose Sharks AHL affiliate's 4th line.
Okay.
So everybody was up in arms this year about
it's still doing better than Brandon Manning is down at the whatever.
Bakersfield Condors.
The Condors.
Yeah, Brandon Manning.
Trout Lake.
Yeah. They got an AHL team, and Brandon Manning is a healthy scratch in the gosh darn American Hockey League. And Drake Caggiula's playing top 6 minutes in Chicago.
Yeah, his numbers haven't been that great, but
define top
he's
6.
in the NHL.
He's playing hockey in general because even in the AHL, Brandon Manning's not playing.
Yeah, I mean, Jason Garrison though. Oh, that was the other player in that deal. There's actually a 4th guy. I can't remember who it was.
Some other guy. Let's go to some questions here.
Okay.
Chris Faber. Chris Faber 39. Canuck Convos on Apple Podcasts. What's your favorite Canucks moment over the past 365 days? Paul?
I mean, the two big ones, the Sedin finale, just for being memorable, despite it being a mean-nothing game at the end of the year. That was actually a really good, intense game with an exciting, perfect ending. And I'm now... I never became a meme, but I was kind of a meme that night as the sad man behind Daniel Sedin. Multiple people were sending me clips.
Why do you turn yourself into a meme?
Do I have to turn you into a meme?
If you want to do something with that, you can.
Well, now I have to.
The way when it happened, it was kind of a flash in the pan, multiple people posting it. That's as memeable as I'll probably ever be. The other one is just the initial success of Elias Pettersson at the start of the season, which was shocking and so much fun for those first few weeks especially.
Geeta, how about you?
I'm just going to piggyback off of Paul's. I'm like, yes, those last couple of games for the Sedins, especially the one we didn't watch.
Well, it's funny you say that because
it was a memorable night.
This Thursday, I'm once again going to Friends Trivia.
Oh, Amelia might be there.
Oh, do you want to go?
Maybe, sure.
I'll inquire.
Okay.
My favorite night was my favorite moment for the Canucks because I don't want to be the same as you two.
Sorry to take two then from you guys.
Obviously probably that the Colorado Avalanche overtime loss, or the Canucks beat them in overtime 7-6 or whatever, where Geeta and I were on that bandwagon for a solid month of they're the comeback kids, the cardiac kids, and Paul's going, how are they the cardiac kids?
That was like the only game they came back from.
But then here we are
they came back against Toronto.
The cardiac kids, Paul. We're bringing it back.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, the cardiac kids just won in overtime. Bo Horvat.
After they coughed up the lead.
And they won yesterday.
Oh, shit.
That's like 11 in a row.
Oh, God, they're going to win. Bo Horvat scored. Here's an old-timey joke because I've been making them all night on the podcast. How does a drunk guy say Bo Horvat? Brorvat.
Is that a joke?
Brorvat, because he just mumbles them together.
Okay.
Brorvat.
Yeah.
Jeez,
Okay.
Demko looks like a young Corey Schneider.
Oh, yeah. Plays like it, too. Well, young Corey Schneider was all plump. He was a husky boy. He goes, Chris Faber also asked, what was your favorite NHL moment over the past 369 days? I think that's a typo, but maybe he just wanted to put 69.
I think he wanted to put 69.
Nice.
Jason Spezza's 1,000th games.
Sure. I was going to say Ovechkin winning the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, that was fun. It wasn't him winning the Stanley Cup. It was everything that came after.
Yeah.
Vegas a season.
No, I hated that.
Yes.
Gross.
That was so exciting.
Paul, you got any favorite NHL moments?
I had one, and I've totally forgotten
Did
what
I
it was.
take it from you? Was it also about Jason?
I mean, the Ovechkin one was my initial, just finally getting the Stanley Cup. And that was pretty big. And actually, the one that came to my mind, and it's a bit of a personal one, is getting to drop unexpectedly into Winnipeg for 2 days during their series with Nashville.
Oh, yeah.
And just getting to sort of absorb some of the playoff hockey atmosphere that has been lacking from our province for a little while now. And Winnipeg is just hockey mad, and they went through years and years of not getting to experience the NHL at all, and they're making up for it now. So that, it wasn't even a full 48 hours, but the night I was there, they had a comeback, huge victory against Nashville in Winnipeg. I was high-fiving all these people dressed in white on the streets.
Fun fact,
what
Winnipeg
kind of
is the official team of this podcast now.
That's okay.
No, I thought you were the one who told me that when I was waffling between St. Louis and St. Louis.
St. Louis? Get out of here. What are you doing in me? Hello, St. Louis.
Getting ready to make my picks for the Stanley Cup.
St. Louis.
St. Louis, who I kept saying were better than they were appearing, and then all of a sudden now they're playing better than they appeared the rest of the year. It's almost like PMAC's always right.
Yeah. You're not always. You're sometimes
Just
wrong.
sometimes, I'm always right.
60%
60% of the time. That's right.
Yeah.
This is I have a new favorite moment, and I'm so glad that when we recorded the podcast last Monday, we were oblivious to this while recording.
Okay.
And that was the 20-hour witch hunt that was Morgan Riley's homophobic slur.
Oh, yeah.
Where my favorite moment is that he didn't say that to the referee.
Because the referee didn't react.
I'm like, it's like he's right there. The microphone's right above him, and the referee doesn't like. There's other times when it happened to Andrew or Ryan Getzlaf was the famous example in the playoffs, and it's like you're penalty.
Did they take it back and there was someone saying like rag the puck?
Rag it, and it makes sense that they were saying rag it because the Bolts went really deep into the zone and they had the odd man, so they had to rag the puck and wait for the guys to show up.
Okay.
So it makes perfect sense. But if you hear that other camera, that other feed, you're like, Jesus Christ, that sounds really bad.
And there were people online after that came out.
Get out of here.
I didn't see the game. I only saw the online aftermath through its evolution. Yeah, but they were saying, like, whoever says rag the puck, and that's where I was instantly like, if you don't know the term rag the puck, then I don't know how much of your opinion on this I want to know in general, because, I'm the first person to go, okay, let's see, is this a legitimate concern? I would like to see changes made in the game to avoid statements like what he was accused of saying from being said.
So you are suggesting that ragging the puck, there being limitations on it so that you can't say it that intently. Like,
no.
There's never going to be that situation. Like, you only rag it a little bit. You know what I mean?
No.
Well,
anyway.
See? Some people just don't evolve. Anyway, I'm
glad. It was just, hockey terminology. You got to be aware.
The less homophobia in the game, the better, and the less problems. These other questions were already answered. 1 second. According Bananas asks, did Louis Eriksson teach Pettersson that Forsberg shootout move? They showed the highlights of him doing it in Dallas. And so we're going to assume yes. And that will be the one thing that Louis Eriksson passed down to the Canucks.
So, I mean, worth it, right?
Yeah, worth it.
$36 million.
And then she suggested, as Dave was arguing about other... Dave's been arguing about MVPs on Twitter today.
He's like holding his own podcast.
We got to... just him. And the cat. And Twitter. Marbles and Amelia.
That rounds out the podcast.
The Marquee PD team MVP debate could be great for the podcast, so we'll do this quickly. Who is your Canucks MVP for the season? Elias Pettersson or Jacob Markstrom?
Honestly, I'd be fine with either of them taking it. I think they've both been outstanding, and I wouldn't be upset if one got it and the other didn't.
I don't think they would be upset.
No, I'm not a big fan of like co-MVPs or whatever, giving the Sedins the trophy together last year. Like, just pick one, and it might be a 1-vote difference if you have a little committee or whatever.
Oh, I like giving two Swedes the MVP every year.
It's a new tradition in Vancouver.
Shit, we got to get a Swede. Petey's got to win that trophy.
So both of them have been outstanding. Markstrom's really coming to his own this year, and there's been rumors that he will get an extension before the start of next season, with the idea being that Demko will have a few years to battle him for 50-50 playing time, and hopefully will take over as the starter by the time that 2-3 year extension expires.
Yeah. Well, we're going to wrap up the podcast this week because it's been a while and we are in a time crunch. Thank God we started 10 minutes earlier than what the Instagram story said we would start at. That's right. I'm trying to be a little more lively on the Pucks on Net Instagram account. So why don't you go give us a follow on Instagram at Pucks on Net. I have Pucks on Net at Instagram.
Yeah.
Not on Twitter, which is
still working on that.
Pucks on Net CA or Pucks on Net Ka. And that's Dave from Ottawa. And if you want to support the show monetarily, please head on over to patreon.com/pucksonnet where you can pledge a couple of bucks. Hey, Paulie, how much?
$5.
Okay. Geeta, how much?
$5 Canadian. any denomination.
What are you going to spend that $5 on?
We're going to...
like a Subway footlong?
I just did the...
We will take international currency.
I wanted... I don't think I told Paulie, our chief math boy on the podcast, the Biscuit, has officially done the Pucks on Net taxes this year.
We're doing well enough to have taxes.
So when I texted Geeta, I'm like, hey, guess what? I'm doing the Pucks on... I'm gathering all the Pucks on Net tax documents, to which she replied, we've got tax documents? So we are legal. And if you do want to support the show monetarily with some money, patreon.com/pucksonnet. Paulie and I are doing a Patreon bonus show this weekend.
Woohoo.
And we'll ask you, we won't put you on the hot seat on the show, but it's going to be on a Sunday.
Oh, okay.
So we want. I think.
Oh no, it's my mom's birthday this Sunday.
Well, then never mind. I was thinking we could finally watch Miracle. And we'll do something.
Yeah.
Patreon.com/pucksonnet.
Send us your ideas if you have any ideas on Twitter at
Yes.
pucksonnetca.
Or pucksonnet.ca. And if you don't want to give us any money, just head on over to the Apple Podcast Store or the Apple Podcast app, iTunes Store. Give us a 5-star rating, a positive review. That helps us out immensely. So we deal with the awful Steve Jobs algorithm. And Spotify, we're there. Google Podcasts, anywhere you could potentially get an RSS feed to deliver a podcast to you once a week before 10 p.m. on Monday nights. Go do it and tell us that you did it. And tell a friend. It's been a while since I've told you to do that, or Geeta's told you to do that. Sorry, since I've asked you to do that, or Dale Earnhardt Sr. over here has told you to do that. But go tell a friend about the show, and that goes a long way if you don't want to tweet about it, because you got a reputation to uphold. But go do
I
that.
Never tweet about it. I got a reputation to uphold.
See what I mean?
I'll
Dave,
tell a friend.
Yeah,
Dave, do it.
All right.
Dave's arguing. So that's signing off for PMAC, for Ryan, and for Mario Andretti. Did I use that one?
You did use that one.
Jeff Gordon.
I gave you so many. You used Jeff Gordon.
Dale Earnhardt Sr., Dale Earnhardt Jr., Tony Stewart.
Okay. You only know NASCAR. You are so Abbotsford.
Who's that guy who's the guy from Maple Ridge? Greg
Oh,
Miller?
don't do that one.
Oh, come on.
He was really good.
That was really fun.
It's been 25 years, you say? Still, yeah. Thanks for listening.
Rock, move, get on